Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot here today to share with you all my review for episodes 4 and 5 of HBO Max new series, Generation. Really excited to break it down. I reviewed the first 3 episodes last week, which were spoiler-free reviews, but today we're going to kind of dive into the spoilers and have a great conversation about this very interesting show. But before we dive into the spoiler review, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts, which you can find those links in the description below. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. It would mean a lot to me if you all can like and share this review. It helps out the channel a lot, but also appreciate all the support. And in the comments, let's discuss these 2 episodes. Which was your favorite out of the 2? Which is your favorite trio? Arianna, Nathan and Naomi, or Riley, Chester, and Greta? For me, I have my pick, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But let's discuss these 2 episodes, your pros, your cons, and all that fun stuff in the comments below. So, I don't know, man. I mentioned it last week in my review. I was very intrigued by the show. I like the euphoria-ish vibes. It's not as serious, and it's some serious topics, no doubt, and some good conversations with the show, but it's not as heavy-handed in some of the drama, which, again, if you all know me, I love me some euphoria and the conversations had in that show, but sometimes it could be a little bit heavy. Sometimes you just want to watch a show, 30-minute breeze, have a good discussion, enjoy these characters, and after watching 4 and 5 of Generation this week, I'm really digging the show. It's a whole vibe. It gives me it's just a fun show. I'm smiling when I'm watching. I'm enjoying these characters. Some of them are taking a little bit longer to kind of gravitate towards, but for the most part, I'm enjoying the acting, the cinematography, the conversations that are being had amongst this cast and this crew and this Gen Z and their perspective on things. Episode 4 was definitely the more conversational episode regarding, Megan and Nathan coming out to be bisexual and all the stuff that we'll talk about here in a bit. And episode 5 was just more of a relaxed episode. Greta and, we see Riley kind of getting closer, as well as the app with Chester and Sam. So we're going to break it all down, but these were just a really good combination of, again, not a serious, heavy, focused 4th episode with, everything with Nathan and his mom and having some fun moments, but then following that up with a more lighter episode. So again, I'm digging what I'm seeing from Generation, but let's kind of get into the breakdown of episode 4, which we see Delilah finally give birth to the son, which we find out who the dad is in episode 5, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But the episode opens up with Chester yet again getting a violation from his principal, not necessarily because of his clothes, but for the choice of words on his fingernails that he had there, as we see Sam kind of questioning Chester regarding the incident that happened last week of him diving in the water with Nathan. Is that a cry for help? Is that, him being a good guy? It's a conversation to be had, but as I had mentioned in my non-spoiler review, it's going to be really interesting to see this relationship between Sam and Chester as we find the age of Chester in episode 5. But it's going to be really interesting to see this dynamic because, again, as we learn within this scene, Chester tells, Sam tells Chester that when he was in high school, he was in the band. He really wasn't comfortable with his identity and being a gay man, but he looks in a weird, not in a weird way, but he looks at Chester as like, I wish I could have been you. I wish I could have wore my clothes a certain way. I wish I could have been, more embracing who I am as a person. So he kind of has that, that not necessarily jealousy, but he's like, you know what? I kind of look up to you, even though I'm, as we find out in episode 5, I'm 12 years older than you. And he's kind of envious of that kind of, thing that Chester has in regards to. What I love about Chester and the performance by Jesse Smith in the show is, again, from the outside looking in, you think that he's confident, he knows who he is as a person, but as we've seen these first few episodes, yeah, he's confident, he knows who he is, but he's alone. He kind of keeps to himself at times. He's reserved, right? He doesn't let all his emotions show on his sleeve. So I really kind of like the dynamic that we're getting with Chester. And again, this relationship with Sam and Chester, we'll see what heads, but I love this kind of opening scene here, especially the line where Chester said he might not make it to GSA program, and he mentions to Sam that he is the asteroid, not the dinosaur. I just kind of like their dynamic. And again, Chester is a whole character in itself. I really enjoy him. But as we see, Chester eventually does decide to go to GSA. This was, again, not that the show was like super heavy on the conversation, but it did have an interesting conversation being said within this episode regarding Chester talking about society, right? And changing the mind in society, how everyone kind of lives within their generational bubble, right? Every generation has their terrible incidents, and it seems like history kind of repeats itself, right? As he kind of mentions the Holocaust, how fast forward to now, we have kids in cages over, and all that stuff. So it is very interesting topic in regards to the perception of the generations of how, again, this generation should learn from the previous generation and so on and so forth. But it seems like we just keep repeating the cycle of making terrible mistakes for humanity, but also just kind of going into the episode about the school funding GSA group, as well as them having a trip being planned for, as they say, the gay motherland of San Francisco. And I love Arianna and Naomi mentioning, let's go to San Francisco to learn about gay pride and gay history. But Arianna and Naomi, the two people in the group that, because it is a straight gay alliance group, but it's like the two straight females of the group, they're like, oh yeah, we can go to San Francisco, but we can go there because it has a 3-story H&M, which I thought was a pretty funny moment there. Cut to see Nathan and Chester growing closer. It's really interesting to see this relationship, because it seems like, again, we know Chester's kind of more focused on Sam, and I don't know if he really romantically is interested in Nathan more so than he is. Chester's a good guy, right? He wears his emotions on the sleeve at points. He keeps to himself at times, but I think that he sees, especially last week with Nathan coming out as being bisexual, he kind of sees, he wants to be there for him, right? He's coming out for the first time. He came out in a way that he didn't really want to, kind of slipped up because he was drunk last week and high. And I think that Nathan just kind of wants to be there for him, which again, it shows, or I should say Chester wants to be there for Nathan. It shows kind of the good character that Chester is. And within this episode, it really kind of focuses on not only Chester, I keep saying Chester, Nathan, but it shows that Nathan's mom, Megan, who we get to spend a little bit more time with, she's a really kind of interesting character. I find her character to be absolutely hilarious. She is a Karen of a sorts in her own way in regards to being the popular mom and wanting to look like her younger daughter and all that stuff. But we really kind of focus on her and how she's dealing with Nathan coming out last week in regards to being bisexual. Some of the teachers in the school, or I should say the parents in the school, I know it's probably hard to see what Nathan's going through and all that stuff. So it's just really interesting to see that dynamic of her perceiving the news of what her son revealed last week and how she's kind of pushing it on the rug, like, oh no, he's just a kid, he was just joking. And it's just really interesting to see her have this moment. It's kind of somewhat of a meltdown in the PTA meeting or whatever they were doing with the cookie conversation and the carrot conversation about identity and how the younger generation identifies with one thing one day and then the next thing. And, why can't we just have one cookie, or why can't we just have one carrot? It was just a really interesting way, again, baby boomers and even millennials like myself, and how we always kind of judge the younger generation in regards to, oh, they got it easy. Oh, they can just make up new rules. It's just a really interesting conversation being had within this Megan character, as we see Arianna kind of make her move on Nathan in this episode as they kissed last week, and seeing her kind of make her way to getting Nathan to maybe get into her and liking her, which I think that might be a storyline in future episodes, him kind of maybe being interested in Chester and at the same time being interested in Arianna, as Naomi is kind of upset by this and they kind of have a moment. She comes out and help her brother and helps him with the fingernails and all that stuff. And as the episode ends with episode 4, they both get pictures of Jack shirtless, texting them both, which was a pretty funny way. So again, I enjoyed the episode 4. I really enjoyed the conversation amongst the parents outside. Ariana's dad, Megan, her husband, talking about Inception and Brad Pitt and all that stuff, but comparing the confusion level of Inception to kids being bisexual. So again, a really interesting conversation, a really interesting episode. We get the trio of the kids, we get the mom and how she looks at her son, but also again it speaks to the older generation looking upon the younger generation. So a really good episode. But my favorite episode and my favorite trio of this show so far is episode 5, where we see Chester, Riley, and Greta hanging out. Very chill episode, very laid back episode, as we kind of see that the school has been canceled because of the fires. We see an episode with Delilah not only having her baby last week, but we get the reveal that Jay is the father of the child, and we finally leave the mall. I'm not going to lie, that running gag or that running kind of opening sequence of her giving the birth and all that stuff, I'm glad that we're finally past that point, right? As we can kind of move on with that particular storyline, we see Chester and Riley hanging out, which I mentioned in my review last week character. She's just so cool. She's so vibeable, just a super chill chick, very artistic, and just seems like a really cool person, right? So I don't know. It just seems like Riley's just like a person I would hang out with because she seems really cool. But nonetheless, we see her and Chester hanging out, him giving her car lessons, and interesting way to give her car lessons in regards to his kind of analogy of how you should be easy on the gas pedal nonetheless. But again, I'm loving their connection, loving their chemistry and how they're building friendships, which is really interesting to watch the show because I don't know if they have all grown up in LA together, because it seems like from the first couple episodes that they're all fairly new to each other. Again, we know Riley comes from a different school, so that explains that relationship there. But it seems like everyone else doesn't really hang out or really know too much of each other, which I don't know. We'll see what goes on later in the season. But as I digress, it's revealed in this episode that Chester is 18. As he's going through his, I don't know what the app, it looks like it was Tinder to me because we saw him hooking up with a random guy that was like 27 years old. But we see him going through the app. Riley's going through, seeing his profile. He says that he's 26, but he's actually, like I said, 18, that it's revealed. But then, Riley swipes over and she finds Sam's profile. And that was obviously just a really instant moment as we see Chester, I guess, in the app. He liked the photo, which is like swipe right, I assume, in whatever the TV version of that Tinder app was. But as I kind of figured, this episode gave me confirmation that Riley is digging Greta. It's not just a one-way flirtatious thing of Greta just being into Riley. It works the other way around. And, Riley's never hooked up with a girl. She really doesn't date people. But I kind of saw that coming, and I really love them as a couple, or a potential couple in this show, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. We see Chester messaging Sam back and forth, just a little bit of sweet nothings, but then they get a little bit more serious in regards to falling in love and seeing falling in love in someone for the first time and all that different stuff, as we see Greta inviting Chester and Riley to her house. And I love the auntie Anna. I just think she's such a fun character. There's a lot of characters in the show that I just think are just cool characters, and she's one of them, as she kind of interrogates Riley and has a bit of a fun moment there. But we see Greta really opening up to Riley and having fun with this trio, her and Chester, and them hanging out, taking photos, and just kind of opening up, because the first few episodes she was kind of shy and kind of kept to herself. So it was really kind of cool to see her really kind of letting go. And this is where we continuously seeing Chester messaging Sam back and forth. The episode kind of ends with them staying the night over Riley's house. We see Riley and Greta getting a little bit closer as they're sleeping in the same bed. And again, I think they're going to be a really cool couple. Seeing how Greta and Riley are going to come together, because it seems like, again, Riley doesn't do relationships and she hasn't dated a girl. So hopefully she doesn't break Greta's heart, because she seems like a sweet character, and we'll see where that goes. But the episode does end with Chester getting a shirtless picture from Sam, and we'll see how Sam will handle the news when he finds out who he is messaging this whole time. But again, this was a more of a chill episode. I love the trio of Chester, Greta, and Riley. Some of my favorite characters in this episode really were the shining point. Again, I love the auntie Anna, and I love Riley, and Chester is just such a fun character, and I love Greta. She's just so sweet. So episode 4, episode 5, I'm really digging this show. I'm digging how it tackles conversations about different generations and how we repeat history, and how a mom looks at her son who's coming out and not accepting him as a person, even though it's an interesting conversation when parents say, I will always love you, except when you do this or do that, or if you're bi or gay. So interesting conversation in episode 4, and then just seeing the character development in episode 5. So a good 1-2 punch for me, and I'm really digging this show. I'm really digging these characters, and excited to see more. So let me know what you all thought about episode 4 and 5 of Generation, your favorite episode of the 2, your favorite character so far. And I guess this isn't really like a theorized type of show, right? Like, oh, what do you think is going to happen? But let me know what you hope to see in the coming weeks. Relationships, conversations, character developments. Let's have a discussion about it in the comments below. As always, make sure to like the video, share the video, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you on the next video.